Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
Welcome to This Week at Work, the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode.
We're talking about Musk's leadership gambit and what it means for your business.
My managers give me a list of more than 5 things every week. It's not a big deal. Really what we're talking about is change, and that gets people to go, why don't we train people? Because we don't have time? What a horrible excuse.
You think Elon has been through leadership training?
I don't think he's had to go through leadership training. When you're the world's richest man, you don't need training. You solve everything with money, and your will is your way. People's biggest issue with Trump is his style. That's a training issue. Trump has never went through that. If he did, he didn't come to AIM, that's for sure. He'd be better at it. Trump, if you're watching, shoot me a text.
So what's keeping you up at night? Let's face it together now on This Week at Work.
All right. Good morning, Burt. How are we doing today?
I'm doing just great, Phil. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. We're going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to get to the lawyer on the clock segment that our fans like so much. We're going to get that near the end. I want to talk about what's going on with Elon Musk and Doge and the request for a report from federal workers to report 5 things that they did that week. I'm sure you've heard about this.
I've heard about it. I've seen some funny cartoons about it. There's quite an uproar about all of this.
Let's take a look at one of those funny cartoons. I know you sent that over this morning as we were prepping here. Set it up for us here, Burt.
Well, I think you've got a teacher who's got a nice big smile on her face saying to her students in class, there's a pop quiz, list 5 things you did last week. And the students, the young students are screaming out and crying. They're being harassed and bullied by being asked that question.
I guess some people will see it as harassment and bully, but as the teasers showed, that it's not unusual to have to give a workplace report on a weekly basis. Our managers do that here. I've had to do that everywhere I work. I've had to write pages of a report every week. And while it may not always be fun, it's not an unusual request. But let's just give some background in case someone isn't following this topic, right? So Elon Musk, as part of his initiative with Doge, he has demanded that all federal employees submit 5 bullet points for their weekly accomplishments. Not too much of an unreasonable request. However, he said in the deadline, he gave a deadline and also said that if you didn't do it, there was the threat for noncompliance and that you may be removed. Since then, the Office of Personnel Management, that's what it's called in the government,
Yep.
OPM, not HR. They said that the request was voluntary. And I know pre-show you and I were talking about how half of these were not even opened, and it could just be a test to see, well, is anyone even reading their email?
Well, we don't want to be accused of fake news, Phil. Half of the responses were not provided. Half of the federal workforce did not provide a response.
Okay, didn't provide the response.
Yeah, so of 2.4 million federal employees, only about 1.2 million responded to the email. But there's also a lot of talk out there that of the 1.2 million who did not respond, many, and I don't have a number for this, but many of those emails were not even opened. So that causes, of course, a lot of people to speculate. Number one, are the employees that these were sent to even real? And number two, if the employees are real, are they even working?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say they aren't working. I hope they're real from that standpoint. But what we did just to have some fun is we went ahead and we created a list of 5 items. We want to break this down, this request, because it has really got people stirred up. I'm hearing our employees talk about it. I hear our members talking about it. And it's a great real live, in the moment HR lesson, right? It is how we manage. Now, of course, you and I, we don't get the benefit of being, one of the wealthiest men in the world, if not the wealthiest man in the world, where you don't have to care so much. You just when you have that kind of money and you're running your business, you don't have to care so much. And I will tell you that I went on to Gronk. I don't know if you're familiar with Gronk. It's like the Chat GPT that Elon Musk has launched, part of his X website, and I went on to Gronk and I asked Gronk, what is it like to work at Tesla? And I thought, okay, well, let's see what his own technology says about his workplace. And it's quite a mixed review. Some people like it because it's motivating as it relates to the mission, and you're working on leading edge technology. You're really making a difference. It's very mission based in that sense. The downside to it is long hours, sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day. It's a manufacturing environment. You have to be present all the time to be there. Of course, we know he's demanded everyone to come back to the office. They say it's not necessarily a workplace that's warm and fuzzy. That's my words, not Gronk's words, right? And I would say, well, I don't think if I knew who Elon Musk was and I went to work for him, I don't think I would expect warm and fuzzy, right? But people expect warm and fuzzy today. They expect to be welcomed, to be treated with a certain level of respect in the workplace and so on. And I know that's what a lot of our training centers around, but I want to just break it down. We broke it down into 5 questions. We're going to go to question number 1. First is how can HR training help leaders balance strong decision making while managing employee morale? And I think that's what we're fighting with right here with Elon Musk is like, all right, he's asking questions. Nothing wrong with the question. What'd you do last week? Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
I don't think there is.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that question at all. A lot of it's the messaging and the speed with which they're requiring responses from people. They have put out a lot in the media about seeking accountability from people, but while it's been out in the media, I don't know what message has been delivered internally. It sort of seems to me that Musk in Doge is communicating with federal employees through the media, and so there's a lot of outrage related to that. I don't know, again, what the messaging has been internally within these governmental agencies, but it seems to me they could be doing probably a better job of communicating, which I would think would help immensely with the employee morale.
So I think that's one of the questions, right? That's one of the questions is, how can a leader assert authority without creating a toxic or disengaged workforce, right?
Right. And I think that happens every day. Leaders have to give assignments. They have to be the person in charge directing a workforce. And these kind of feel like strong words, but it's the role of leaders today is to coordinate, to direct, and to bring organization together for the betterment of the objectives of that business. And how you do that is the important part. And that gets back to kind of some of the pre-roll when Nick and I were cutting up about this topic yesterday in preparation. It's if you don't train leaders, how do you expect them to know the right way forward? Because I will first say it's different in every business. I've been in warm and fuzzy businesses where you're expected to have really a soft voice with lots of empathy and lots of consideration for people. And I've worked in other businesses where not so much. It's like that doesn't fly. And depending on who you're working with and the environment you're working in, it's a different culture. And I think that has to be taken into account. And when you bring these leaders in and you give them a role of leading other people, they're bringing whatever they think is right. And that's where the disconnect starts to occur. And I can only imagine, Burt, just picture this. You walk in, you've been called in because there's some union trouble within a workplace, and they've asked you to come in and you start your investigation process, and you learn, oh, somebody asked everyone to report 5 things that they did this week, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing you start to hear mismanagement is what I would call that, where people just, it's a simple request. It was just done wrong. And
Yeah.
I don't know how it happened publicly versus privately. I only know what I've been exposed to, but I think you have to be able to explain more to people what you're trying to do, even though I think the request is very, very reasonable.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and again, I think a lot of it really does come down to communication, and but that even illustrates the point that when you have a workforce of 2.4 million people, I mean,
Think
none of
about
us
that.
have ever
Yeah.
worked in an
No.
organization with even a minute fraction of that number of employees. I mean, even though the country's largest employers don't approach that number, and so that kind of reemphasizes the point about the size of the federal government, which is sort of the point of Doge, is to rein that back in. It's like, is it just too big to manage?
Wait, are you saying,
right.
Bert, that you don't actually manage your fan club? So there's not that, you haven't managed that many people, right?
Correct. That is correct. I do not manage my fan club.
It's just natural for him, Nick. He does what comes naturally for him. All right. So there's another question I have here in response to that is, the biggest mistakes company makes when rolling out new policies. So here they are. We got a new policy once a week. I want this report. And I don't really remember if he said, I'm going to want this every week from you, or he was asking for it in a one-time report. But companies often change direction. They change policy. They make adjustments. And when that happens, that's the opportunity right there to stop, check. And we've been talking about this in our roundtables this last week, actually, is change management. If you haven't been trained in change management, understanding how people go through the process of change, when you introduce new policies and new practices in the workplace, to just expect that they're going to come into the workplace and accept that policy and change and move on is very naive today. It doesn't happen. Change management is an art of execution. And you want to know when I see people engage in it more often than not?
When, Phil? When? I'm dying to know.
When they're going to do workplace reductions, right? So up until that point, I heard we don't have time to train our people. We can't afford to train our people. Now you're doing a workplace reduction where you don't have time and you don't have money. That's why you're doing reduction. And then they go, oh, we need some change management training.
Right.
It's like, it's a day late, dollar short, as they used to say.
Yep.
But change management is critical in that piece.
Well, and change management to me, and again, people are going to see a common theme running through this. Change management, again, biggest feature, communication.
Yeah, it is, and if Tanya Zion was on here with us, she would say it's always one of the top 3 hurdles to get over when we do employee opinion engagement surveys. Communication is often one of the top obstacles, and change management is always buried within that.
Yep.
Think about it. You take a supervisor right off the floor. They've done a great job. You promote them, and then you ask that person to go lead people. Now that's change, right? From
Yes.
bud to boss, we call it. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
Another
right.
question we had here. So I'm going to shoot this one to you, Burt. What would you say about it? What role does HR training play in shaping company culture and strategies that actually work?
Yeah, well, training uncovers, practical, real-world approaches to fostering a strong, positive workplace culture. And so HR really has a role to play in that training to bring the employees along, to get them up to speed, and I would say not just up to speed, but to engender buy-in by the employees on why we're doing this, why we're doing these things, and why all of a sudden relating it back to Doge. What is the reason for requesting the 5 things and that you did last week? And if you can get the employee buy-in, that to me is critical to getting through the changes. But that requires great communication.
Back to communication, and usually buy-in isn't hard to get if you can get understanding, even when there's disagreement. And that's,
Agree.
you and I had this conversation when we had Luther and Fred Falker, and we were talking just a couple weeks ago on our special program for DE&I. And it's like when you can sit down and have a conversation about things and focus on what we need to do and what is probably better to do versus where we're divided and approaching it from an adversarial standpoint, it's easy to move forward. It's not complicated. Everyone knows a company has to survive and be healthy in order to employ people. And now not everyone's motivated the same way, but people do understand. The majority of people understand. And then I think you'll get, the flock mentality where everyone will come along in that.
Yeah, and
but
again,
you have to start with the right vision in mind, with the right communication.
And again, Phil, I think you hit a critical point there. Not everyone getting buy-in doesn't mean you have everybody's agreement with it. What you need is their understanding of it. They may not agree with what you're doing or the ultimate result of it, but at least they can understand it. And if they understand it, I think that you can actually get the buy-in. It's great if they actually accept it and agree with it, because then they'll become advocates for it. But again, you just need to make sure that they have an understanding, that they don't view things as being unfair, arbitrary, or a word I hear you use in conversation all the time, Phil, capricious. Arbitrary and capricious. Employees don't like that.
That's right. That's one of my favorite words. You're right, Burt. I can't spell it, but I do like it. Hey, here's another thing. I'm assuming that becomes a challenge for you as a lawyer sometimes. Saying if you had a jury trial or anything, you don't have to like this, but you have to understand the law. I would assume that is always, not always, but often a point of differentiation, right? Of you have your own personal feelings, you have your own perspective on this, but the law says.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit, with respect to Title VII and DE&I.
Yeah,
And the Title
exactly.
VII, what it says is you may not consider protected statuses as you make employment related decisions. You can't consider it. You have to make decisions without regard to those protected statuses. And a lot of people don't like that, but that's what the law is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did the same thing with Missouri Proposition A. Like the first 15 minutes is everyone just throwing up all their emotions about, I don't like it, it's unfair, why did we do this? But in the end, we got to comply with it. All right. And number 5, my final question here is, how can companies ensure their HR training programs aren't just compliance checkboxes, but actually drive engagement and retention, and you have to measure it, right? And that gets us right back to the beginning. What are the 5 things you did? But how do you measure the implementation of training is not hard, but you got to do it. And that's the secret sauce. And I don't have it in front of me. Tanya Zion did a great, and I know we've made this available on social media. She did a great case study with an organization that is measuring the effectiveness of their HR practices and the training that they put in place. And to see the shift that they've had, significant shift in retention and the confidence in management and leaders and managers, and the productivity improvement is significant, and it's measurable. You have to measure it. And often, sometimes in HR, we don't like to measure things like this because it feels soft or kind of aloof. But there are solid ways to measure improvement and sustainability. And if you're not going to measure it, then why do it? Just why do it? What you measure gets done. That old attitude. I mean, that's important to have in this case. Always suggest that you're measuring that, even if it's only as simple as an employee opinion and engagement survey that gives you some form of measurement.
Yeah, it's interesting because you get employers that do. The trend was for decades performance reviews of employees, and they do them once a year, and it was performance review season. And there are a lot of companies that have gone away from the formal performance reviews. I don't personally like that from a legal standpoint, but there are a lot of companies that have gone away from it. There are some that don't do any performance reviews, but there are a lot of companies out there that have a model of sort of continuous performance review and real-time feedback. And so I think that's an example of an effective way. It might be different than what people were used to, but it's a better way to communicate to people in real time how things are going in the workplace, and it offers opportunity to engage with the employees and to get their feedback as well as to how they think they're doing and how they think things are going at the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just looking here, for those who are listening, if you're not training your managers, there's no good excuse. There's no good excuse. People will say we don't have the money to train managers. Good, then you're on a path that you're not going to have money in the future, because it does come down to the effectiveness of your manager. So just pick the date. You're going to have to do that. Yeah, they may say we don't have the time. There's all kinds of solutions to time. That's a horrible excuse. We don't have time. I look at those types of things, and sometimes it frustrates me. I understand it. I feel it as a CEO too, all the pressures of money and time. But if you don't do that, I'm not sure how you expect to get better. I mean, it's a delusion of, well, we're not going to do that, but we'll get better. It just makes no sense. It's kind of like knowing you have quality problems, but we're not going to look into quality from that standpoint. You can check out all the training that you would need to find on the AIM website. There's plenty of programs depending on where you want to start. I would highly recommend you start with our Leadership for Leads program, and it's designed to go take your lead people through your Supervisor Essentials program, through your Principles of Leadership program. It's a 3-step program, and it just allows you to develop your people sequentially. It's not dipping them in one time and they're done. It gives you the ability to progress them through a process of learning, and you will no doubt see results from that. And if you want to measure those, then you give us a call and you'll work with Tanya Zion, and she's excellent at that.
Hey, Phil, on this, on the Principles of Leadership,
yep.
course page here, if I scroll down, there's a case study. Is that what you were referring to with Tanya, or is this a different case study?
I believe that's it, Nick. Now you're asking me about things. That might be one of the case studies. I know there are some examples of case studies, but that looks like it easily could be one of the case studies that I just saw one last week. I don't know if that's the same one or not.
Okay. Well, it can be found on the AIM website. That's all I did.
It's not one of my list of 5 things done is, read every case study that gets produced. But I can give you a list of 20 for this week so far. All right. All right, Burt, are you ready to get into Supervisor Essential? See where my mind is? Are you ready to get into Lawyer on the Clock?
I'm ready, Phil.
All right, Nick, pull the lever.
Curious about a case that could wreck your workplace? Lucky for you, we have a lawyer on the clock.
So, Phil, yesterday I did something I don't always get an opportunity to do, and that is to listen to
You made a list of 5 things, didn't you, that you did for the week?
Yeah, exactly. I spent some time listening to an oral argument at the United States Supreme Court yesterday. For those who don't know, those oral arguments.
Didn't everybody listen to that? Doesn't everyone just tune in to listen to that?
Maybe I'm behind the times, Phil, but
no, I just think you're on top of it, Burt, right?
Exactly.
This is why you're on this program and no one else.
Well, yesterday the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral argument in a case called Ames versus Ohio, and in that case, the U.S. Supreme Court basically, in my opinion, indicated almost a scary, or what they referenced, Judge Alito even called it, radical agreement among the parties that were arguing before the court, and even I think the judges in their questioning, that in what would be considered reverse discrimination cases, that there should not be a higher standard or burden of proof. In this case, in this particular case, that the female employee was suing in the state of Ohio for heterosexual bias. She claimed that she was passed over for promotions and other decisions were made in the workplace that favored LGBT employees over heterosexual employees. Now, not all of the circuit courts, not all of the federal circuit courts are in agreement, but this court in Ohio, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, held that there was a heightened standard in so-called reverse discrimination cases. The Supreme Court, in my opinion, yesterday, through the questioning, appeared almost entirely united that discrimination is discrimination, and whether it's reverse discrimination or not reverse discrimination, everybody's got the same standard of proof, because otherwise there'd be some sort of discrimination.
Yeah, right.
So it seems kind of logical, and I think that even the person who is arguing for the Ohio Department of Youth Services seemed to state that the case was doomed because she's heterosexual and therefore had an uphill battle of evidence. That's an erroneous conclusion. And so I think that that even the parties who were arguing were sort of in agreement that there should not be a higher standard of proof. Our oral argument was actually kind of jovial. The justices were joking with the lawyers were joking with the justices, and I think that's probably what the radical agreement among the parties were that Alito was kind of referencing.
Yeah, it sounds to me like, okay, they were agreed discrimination, period. And you and I talk about just don't discriminate and you're fine, right? It's like, do I have to? Don't I have to? What do I have to do? Who shouldn't I be careful with? And it goes right back to our training. If you just take the right approach and you're not discriminating, period, for any reason, for any topic, on any level, then you're going to be all right. Now, what appears to me in this is it's hard to prove. Right? It's hard to prove when you feel you were wronged and you feel you were wronged because of something discriminatory. It's just very difficult to prove unless you had something in writing or you could document the verbal message that was delivered. Otherwise, it's just difficult. And I think that's where maybe they were saying the higher standard has to come in.
Well, I think that the higher standard case is developed with the thinking that you're unlikely to face discrimination if you're part of the majority. And right. So therefore they created this heightened standard. And okay. I think what the Supreme Court is going to say, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a 9-0 decision, is just because you're part of the majority population does not mean that you are not subject to discrimination. For instance, in this case, again, if there's favoritism for LGBT employees over heterosexual employees, that issue, the burden of proof, is what you're talking about, Phil. They still have the burden to prove that, but the case shouldn't be thrown out based on a legal standard that doesn't exist in Title VII.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Well, now, the reason I bring this case up is I do think it has, of course, broader implications. And so, again, let's presume that we see a 9-0 decision from the U.S. Supreme Court on this. We can then take this decision back and say, okay, there's no heightened standard here. Discrimination is discrimination, no matter what part of the population you're in. You can't be discriminated against based on any sort of protected status. And so now let's think about an application of this to DE&I programs in the workplace. And I think, again, you're going to see a 9-0 decision on this. And to the extent any DE&I program has been preferring people based on a protected status, a decision from the Supreme Court saying that there's no heightened standard here, or a short decision, as some of the justices were advocating, saying that discrimination is discrimination, I can promise you that people will use that decision to say that DE&I is illegal, which always gets back to us saying, if you're going to implement DE&I, you need to do it very carefully.
Very carefully. Absolutely. What else you got there, lawyer on the clock?
All right. So the only other one I'm going to just jump in with is because it's kind of consistent with what we're talking about is that the EEOC has vowed that they are going to target anti-American discrimination in the workplace. And so, national origin is a protected status under Title VII. And to the extent employees are being discriminated against in the workplace because they're American, you kind of read the Supreme Court decision or the Supreme Court oral argument yesterday, and if they come out with that short decision that discrimination is discrimination, the EEOC, I think, is taking some points from all of this and saying that companies can't discriminate against people who are American.
Interesting.
Yeah. All kinds of interesting
So
stuff.
someone must have been discriminated against because they are American.
Well, I think what the cases that you're seeing out there is that people who are it has to do a lot with the H-1B visa programs and people coming in from foreign countries to work for employers in the United States, and our companies. Do they have an anti-American bias when they're bringing in the H-1B employees instead of hiring Americans? I think that's where you'll really see that raise its head.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder what would happen if you had a Trump gold card. Would that just squash that altogether? You've heard the Trump gold card, $5 million. You can buy your American citizenship, basically. It's going to solve the national debt with that.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yes.
If it works, I'm in favor of it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Burt. Hey, you got a white shirt on today, and we talked a lot about training. Where are you going to be later today?
I'm going to be doing a little training for a shared client of AIM and Ogletree. Phil, you and I are going to be out there together to do some training on investigations.
Yep, that's a big topic. We also are offering that to the public as well. While this is a private program that we're doing, again, I applaud the team. It's going to be all their HR leaders from around the country. There is a program that you and I will be doing later in March that you can find on our website, and we will be talking about workplace investigations and what you need to know and how to do them. It's a great program. I know we've done it several times. It's very popular, so feel free to join us, and we'd be happy to be sharing our knowledge with you and helping you be better at workplace investigation, particularly if you've never been trained before, which many leaders haven't. They're just expected to be good at it. Once again, back to our point. All right, that's it for this week, Burt. I'll see you in a few hours, and I'll see everyone else here next week, 7:30 Central Time. Bye-bye.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, and make sure it's on your calendar. If you're an on-demand viewer, don't forget you can be part of the show by watching live at 7:30 a.m. Central every Thursday morning, when you can get your burning questions answered by using the question mark icon to the right of the player. In fact, you can ask a question now. Head over to aimea.org. Under Member Resources, you'll find This Week at Work. Click Listen Live to register for our next episode and submit a question. Or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment. We'll see you next week when we discuss what's happening this week at work.